Hey everyone, so in this video I'm going to share with you some simple tips that hopefully will help you to make it easier for you to draw the figure in perspective. Now that can be one of the most challenging things for most people, but I think just like what I do with what I did with my own practice is that I try to master or be proficient with drawing the figure in terms of simple forms first, and then afterwards you can flesh those simple forms with some basic knowledge of anatomy and so on. So of course it helps to learn to look at the figure in real life. There's nothing that can replace that, and you have yourself as the best model possible, and that's what I did. I looked at myself in the mirror and see how do forms overlap, and that would help my basic understanding of anatomy and so on. But as far as understanding how things are distorted and so on and foreshortened, it helps to know some basic things, and that's what I want to share with you in this video, and things that you can apply with your own imagination just to practice and get better at this stuff. Now, of course, when you draw the figure in perspective, it becomes foreshortened. So let's actually look at that first, and then we can actually go on to discussing overlap, because that's also very important. So say we have a form like that as a cylinder, right? We can see that this end is the same height as this end, yeah? Right? So at this point, we're imagining that we're looking at this like this. So basically, none of the either ends are closer to us than the other. So they both appear to be the same. Now, if we rotate this like so, then it actually shifts. So now we're going to have this happening. So we're imagining that the cylinder has rotated. Now, notice that the distance between here is less. You see? So almost this distance shrinks a little bit. And also, the other observation is that this end gets smaller. So the end that is further away from us gets smaller. The one that is closer to us is larger. That's a key observation. If you're drawing an arm, right? And the arm is like an L shape like this. So we know that there's not necessarily any foreshortening happening here. However, when it actually moves forward or away, that's when foreshortening occurs. So before we actually go into that, let's discuss another thing. Now, let's look at cross contour lines. I've emphasized cross contour lines in my previous tutorials over and over and over again. I can't stress them enough because they're very important to giving your drawings a sense of forms, orientation, and reinforcing their volume and structure. Now, if you have a form like this, see these lines, the curvature of these lines, think of them like arrows, okay? If something is pointing that way, see the arrow is going to be like so. If it's pointing in this way, it's going to be like so. So this is very important when you're paying attention to forms and their orientation. So for example, if we have this simple, let's say this is a cylinder, we're looking at it straight on, so we can't see the top or the bottom. However, if we tilt it forward, well, the top forward, right? So now it's going to look something like this. You see? So now we're seeing the top side and the bottom side is being hidden away from us. Vice versa, if we flip it the other way, say we have it like so, right? You see? So by doing this, basically what I'm saying is just by paying attention to the curvature of the cross contour lines or the edges, these lines help us to determine the orientation. So that's something that's very subtle, and sometimes we can overlook it, but it's very important to creating, the illusion of foreshortened forms, okay? So going back again to what I was discussing, if you're drawing an arm like this, right? And I'm going to just be using simple forms like that. See, now if the arm tilts forward, we're going to have something like so, right? You see what I'm saying? Because now it is facing this way. So that's something that's useful to keep in mind as well. Now, another thing that's very important to keep in mind is that with drawing things in perspective, we have to pay attention to overlap. Okay, so if you have three forms like this, if we do like this I'm communicating something about each one, that this A is in front of B and B is in front of C. If I have it like this, I'm saying B is in front of A and C. If I have it like this, I'm saying C and A are in front of B. That's the importance of overlap. Okay, now when it comes to forms in perspective, you have to also keep that in mind. So not only are you paying attention to what's being getting smaller away from you, and you also have to think about the shortening of the length of things as they recede or project from space. You also have to think about overlap, because if you don't, it can be very confusing. Now, going back to this simple example, here I illustrated in a very subtle way here, this overlap. See, if I didn't do this, let's say I did something like this. So I'm saying this is coming towards us, and then we have this here, right? But what if I had this like this? See how confusing that is? So basically, you have to make sure that your overlaps and everything is consistent. And this is especially useful when you're creating forms from your own imagination, because there's endless things you can do with this. Now, another important thing that's very useful to keep in mind is, of course, thinking of the rectangular prism, or just a prism in general. It could be a cube, it could be a rectangular prism, it could be something just in terms of a block. Now, this is very useful because it enables you to think of the container space, the space that holds a particular thing. And when you're drawing the human figure, this is very, very useful concept. And you're going to see how I'm going to apply that in a second. Now, in addition to this, it's good to think of how to draw a simple square in perspective. So remember, I shared before that when you're drawing a square, once you put a cross like that, that tells you where the horizontal center is and where the vertical center is. And of course, when you're drawing things in perspective, the same principle applies. So now this enables you to be able to find where that midpoint is going to be. So you can be able to determine where the half point of something is going to be when it's receding in space. And that's regardless of how far it's receding in space. You can still use the same concept. Just draw that X, and that will give you a rough estimate of where that midpoint is. So here I found that midpoint. So if I'm drawing something that's receding in space, like the human figure, I can now say, okay, I have an idea of where the half point of the head is. So if the head is going to be, say, I'm going to use a quarter of the space. So now I can draw another X. I find where this is. I know that the head is going to be here. You see, intuitively, we may not do this because it seems like it's too big. But when something is seen in perspective, that's actually what's going to happen. So we know that the shoulder is going to be here, and the halfway point of the body is going to be here, right? So this gives us a good idea of, when we're actually drawing things in perspective, how to control the distortion in size and space. Now, important thing to be aware of, and it goes back to cross contour lines, is if you have something like this, right? Let's say we have a form like this. If I'm looking at it straight on, of course it's going to be like this. That's the halfway point. Eyes are found here. However, when you're looking at something that's rotated away from you, right? So for example, like with this, now let's say we're looking at the top of the head, right? So now the eyes are not going to be halfway anymore. The eyes are going to be further down. So the eyes may actually be down here. And then the top of the head, we're actually looking at here. See, so it's not like this. So looking at something like this, you have to remember that the eyes are not going to be halfway. The half point is actually going to be further down. So the eyes may actually be down here. And this is the top of the head that you're looking at. See, so now it doesn't look so weird. And see how this is just a simple shape that's drawn in perspective. The same thing can be applied when you're thinking of the entire figure. So now, even though this is just a flat shape, you can actually give it some depth, and then it becomes something more like so. then you can actually think of the figure in a more three-dimensional way, like so. So now you're seeing the top of the shoulders. You see, it's not just a flat shape like this. Now it's three-dimensional. So I'm imagining the torso as something like so. The arms are now going to be cylinders. Likewise, the pelvis and the legs projecting from that. See, and the head is actually now not a flat circle, but actually a three-dimensional form. You see? So that's what I'm actually, this is the basis that you keep in mind. And it's good to go over these individually to kind of reinforce the idea in your mind. And then you apply this when it comes to drawing the figure in perspective. And I'm going to do 3 or 4 examples for you to see how I'd actually apply these concepts in, drawing the figure in various poses. And then afterwards is when you can use your anatomical knowledge, information that you learn about how the body's actually designed, and then kind of, weave these things together to make it to more realistic. But I think if you're beginning with drawing or playing with the idea of drawing the figure in perspective, now I feel like it's best to start with these simple forms. See, so I'm just having fun with this. All I'm doing essentially, just playing over and over, is I'm using these basic forms. So like for the arms and for the legs, I'm using a cylinder. If I want the arm to bend backwards, then I have this one project out and this one comes in. See, so now by doing that, I have this will overlap this. So I can make this one be coming forward. I can make it going backwards. So since I'm having the form that's closer to me, form 1, overlap or closer to me than form 2, so it overlaps form 2. If it were the other way around, then it would be like this. So this form would actually overlap this one. So then I'm communicating a different relationship. And that's some of the key things to keep in mind, when you're drawing things in perspective, is that you have to make the form diminish in size. And if you notice here, I'm not necessarily trying to be accurate per se. What I'm doing is playing around with the relationships of the masses, the main forms, and it will be believable. That's all you need to do. Make sure that you have a sense of how things are diminishing. Make sure your overlaps are important, and make sure that the distortion seems about right. So for example, if you're saying the leg is like this, right? If the leg now rotates towards us counterclockwise, then that means the leg is now has to be shorter than this distance. See, so it has to actually be more like so. See, so I've made the distance less. And by doing this, I'm actually conveying that the form is facing towards us and not away like this one. Vice versa, if I were to rotate it in the other direction, like so. Then it would go like this. And notice that again, the length here is shorter. It is short. This length now, the new length, is shorter than the length when it's just facing sideways. So if the form is facing away or towards us, it diminishes in length. So by doing some of these things, I believe you'll have more than you need in your arsenal of tools and techniques to really start having lots of fun with just coming up with different poses and really just exploring drawing the figure in perspective. Remember, now you don't have to concern yourself with anatomical accuracy and all those things. You just want to be able to have it seem believable. None of these are anatomically sound, but they are believable, and they're believable enough for me to convey an idea. And that's the key thing that you want to focus on. Don't be caught up so much in the intricacies of the principles, because no one will ever get everything 100% right. Never. All right. Focus on the overall idea, and at the end of the day, have fun. Have fun. All right. And that's the cool thing that this allows you to do. Focus on just basic shapes, basic forms, and the relationships between them. And you'll be well on your way. All right. So hopefully you found this useful. You found something that you could apply to your own work, or you were just entertained, whatever it is. Please give the video a thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.